Okay, so I think we are live straight away. Wow, we're on fire tonight. We're having two power hours. What's it called? What's it called? It's 2 power hours. Double power.
Double power
What
is
should we
one way
call
of
two
putting
powers?
it. That's it.
Excellent. Good. So if you just joined us live on Facebook, you are privileged to be in the company of these two wonderful people. So Jane Aherne and Neysan Chah. So Neysan's a dentist colleague of ours who's over in Ireland. So we're just talking about the situation over in Ireland with regards to the lockdown and everything that's going on there. So that's very interesting. And Jane, who turns out to be from Dublin, where she works with us in London, which is great. We're very lucky to have her. So tonight we're going to be talking about the shocking truth about sugar. So what is it about sugar that's such a problem, Jane? Obviously, dentists hate sugar, right?
Not so much hate, but I think we like to limit the amount and frequency that people take to obviously preserve the dental health.
Yeah, yeah. So Jane, what is sugar?
Well, sugar is essentially a carbohydrate in the form of glucose, and it's probably the most efficient source of energy for the body, but also the only source of fuel for the brain.
Brain, yeah.
There are debates around carbohydrates in general and whether we actually need them to survive because of something called gluconeogenesis, which transforms proteins and fats and breaks them down into glucose. But if we are looking to nourish our bodies, it is good to have carbohydrates, particularly in the form of fruits, vegetables, and fiber, things like that. So starches, your whole grain foods and such. However, even though these are very good for you and good for your health, some of them, even the good sugars, fructose, for example, can have a negative impact on your teeth, which I'm sure Neysan will speak about. So we have, the people kind of define, sugar as this sort of this bad guy, things that you find in fizzy drinks, the refined sugars. So they'd be probably, as I say, the sort of fast releasing sugar, that instant hit of energy. It doesn't need much processing in the body. It kind of instantly goes into the bloodstream for utilization as energy. However, if it's not utilized as energy, you can then have sort of too much your blood glucose concentration is high, and then it can be stored as adipose tissue, which is fat, and prolonged kind of excessive amounts of sugar intake can also lead to insulin resistance, which is essentially how we get type 2 diabetes, which leads to other problems.
No, it's very interesting because you hear a lot of people saying that they try and categorize fructose as not being sugar. It's basically what happens. Sorry?
Which is not true. Sorry, go on.
Of course it's not true. Yeah, of course it's not true. But there seems to be this thing that if you're on a low carbohydrate diet, you can still have like fruits and vegetables. Well, vegetables not so much, but fruits in particular.
Yeah, so the keto diet, I think they call it. But if you're in a ketogenic state, you have absolutely zero carbohydrate, hence what I spoke about earlier, the gluconeogenesis, which proteins and fats then have to go to a further process of being broken down. So if you say I'm on a keto diet, yes, you're having a salad with lettuce and tomatoes and watermelon for dessert. That is carbohydrates, and essentially will be sugar, will break down into glucose. Fructose is a little bit more slow releasing, so it needs to go to the liver first before it can be broken down to its constituent parts, one of which being glucose. So that takes about 90 minutes to be available to be utilized for energy, for example. And as I say, the fruit will also have fiber and different things like that. But it is essentially sugar, and it transforms into the same thing within our blood.
Yeah, no, interesting. So,
Fantastic.
Nathan, so
Yeah.
sugar for a dentist, is it a bad thing or not such a bad thing? What would you say?
I think it. Thanks very much, Jane, for clarifying the whole basically story about sugar, and that makes basically me and everybody watching realize how important sugar it is. It is one of the main nutrients for our brains, so it is
Yeah,
an important part of diet. You can't say kind of cut it out completely, and we are still getting sugars and stuff like that from different aspects of our diet, like fruits and certain vegetables and stuff like that. So it is an important part of our diet. We can't eliminate it, but we can control the amount and the frequency. From a dental perspective, the amount and the frequency are two important keys to reduce the amount of damage that it would cause to our teeth. And obviously, we spoke about fizzy drinks, for example. They give you that instant hit, but it might not actually be a sustainable source of energy. So it's nice while you're enjoying that fizzy drink, but it has a lot of damaging effects on your teeth and on your health in general.
yeah,
And I'm sure we'll come back to it, but fizzy drinks, not only they contain a huge amount of sugar, but they are quite acidic as well. And from a dental perspective, they have quite damaging effects on our teeth as well. And I'm sure we'll come back to that a bit later on.
yeah. No, it's very interesting. So, from your point of view, Jane, there's obviously these different types of sugar. Do you find that some types of sugar are worse for some people than others in terms of different forms as well? Because you mentioned like fructose, glucose, and like the slow releasing, fast releasing carbohydrates.
In terms of so if we're not talking about sort of dental hygiene or dental health, sorry, it all depends on how much activity, physical activity you do.
Yeah.
If you enjoy eating sugary foods but aren't particularly active, again, as I said, it's not being utilized. That fuel, that energy isn't being utilized. So it hangs around and it's stored. There's some in your blood, stored some glycogen, that's how it's stored as. So you'll have your blood glucose, your muscle glycogen stores, and your liver glycogen stores. But if it's excessive, as I say, it can lead to weight gain. However, if you're a marathon runner or you're doing the Tour de France, the easiest fuel source would be, as I say, sugar or glucose. Now, people have developed different types of sports drinks where they reduce the actual sugar and increase the amount of carbs, or like carb percentage. So in how, if sugar is actually bad, it's yes and no, but it all depends on if you're utilizing the amount you're actually consuming. You can see in just the body shape of someone who runs marathons frequently and look at what they're actually eating. You're thinking, wow, they're having lots of calories, predominantly carbohydrates. They're eating a lot of, those serene loaves that are high in sugar and kind of keep you going for a long time. But they're incredibly slim. And yet, if there's sort of no activity or little to no activity and very sedentary life, that person could be having less carbohydrates and sugar, but still gaining weight. So if it's just in terms of actual physical health, the amount of sugar intake you're actually having does depend on whether it's being used or not.
Yeah, so the output is really important. So in terms of, like, from a dentist's perspective, I guess the delivery therefore is really important. So you can, if you've got the output and you're not storing it, it's how you're getting it into your body that's important. Do you see many athletes in your clinic, or people that partake in regular exercise, Neysan?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Obviously, health and fitness is very big part of modern life. So we do see a lot of people that might not be professional athletes per se, but they are very, very active, cycling, marathon runners, and general runners. So Yes, we do see that. And that is a very interesting topic that Jane brought up. A lot of those athletes will need a lot more nutrition and basically meals and all of that. So one of the advice that I would give them, obviously they still need the calories. They have to take them regularly, and it might not be possible to take the whole basically calorie intake in one go, in one sitting at lunchtime, and that would be it. So maybe minimizing the frequency of sugar in particular intake would be one advice that I would give any athletes watching. So maybe have set meal times as such, rather than snacking and grazing throughout the day on different parts, like every half an hour and stuff like that. Having set meal times every couple of hours even might reduce the damage that it might cause on your teeth. So it's all about the balance. I feel that, yes, if you need that much calorie to sustain your body for whatever activities you do, maybe you can do it smartly and do it in such a way that it will benefit your body, but at the same time, it will minimize the risk to your teeth as well, because it is part of our whole health system, and we need to take good care of it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. One of the questions that I'd like to ask you, Neysan, if I may, is do you think there's possibly a false sense of security with the term good sugars?
There is. I think a lot of people don't realize how much fruits contain sugars, like even natural fruits and all of that. They're good sugars, the likes of fructose and other parts that might be kind of better for us. There is debate whether they are cariogenic, meaning they cause dental decay or not, but I think this is my personal opinion, and there is some research to back this up, that even the good sugars in high frequency and high intake can have damaging effects. We have to bear in mind, obviously we're talking primarily about sugar, but the acidity of food goes a long way in determining what is good or bad for our teeth.
Yeah.
For example, orange juice, it might contain the good category of sugar, but it can be quite acidic. And I know we spoke about this in earlier sessions, but huge quantities of it and high frequency intake of these kind of things can cause what is called dental erosion, which is basically the acid acting on our enamel, and over time it can erode the outer surface or the enamel of our teeth. So again, it goes back to the balance, reducing the amount and reducing the frequency. The frequency is very key in determining our dental health.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about like children's teeth, didn't we? And obviously, to help children grow, one of the things that mammals have a lot of in their early years is milk. So milk is made up of fats and proteins and sugar, lactose. So what's the effect of lactose on your teeth as a baby?
Lactose is a sugar, and any type of sugar that is in contact with our teeth for prolonged periods of time, in particular in the case of, for example, infants who are just about to get their teeth. An interesting fact is that our teeth are very, very highly prone to decay and dental caries as they erupt. So they are very, very prone and very basically prone to dental decay. So that's very, very important. As the teeth are starting to come up, we have to really start obviously brushing them straight away and minimize the amount and frequency of sugar again. But one thing that is it causes quite drastic damage to teeth is kids or infants that fall asleep with the baby bottle basically full of milk in their mouth, and that can have quite a significant amount of damage to their teeth. There's a term that's called baby bottle decay or something like that, and basically the teeth, especially the top ones, are completely destroyed, and that is caused by prolonged amount of sugar which is in the milk in contact with our teeth. So that is something that new parents should be very aware of, and take the bottle away as soon as the child falls asleep. And in general, the best thing to basically have in a baby bottle when they're asleep or falling asleep is water. I know practicalities of it might dictate otherwise, but this is something that we have to be very, very conscious and aware of, not to let children fall asleep with the bottle full of milk or juice, basically, but that can cause some amount of damage.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Do you have any views on that in terms of baby nutrition, Jane?
It's funny. I was going to actually ask you, Neysan, about the. You said like baby bottles not being left in the mouth. In terms of breast milk versus sort of formula and the similar situation, what would be your view on that? Because actually I wouldn't know in terms of sort of, berries and breast milk. Does it cause it? Because obviously it's very sweet, breast milk.
It is, and now I'm going to take an educated guess and say that it does contain a lot of. It's not from personal experience, but it is. It does contain quite a huge amount of sugar. One of the things. Now, I haven't come across any research. This is my humble opinion on it. The likelihood of children falling asleep for prolonged period of time with basically breast milk is less likely. So that might not come into it, but if I had to guess, I would say it could potentially cause similar amount of damage if it's used in the manner that I described earlier.
Okay.
I guess the issue with breast milk is that how old do kids' teeth cut through?
Average ages is around the age of 6 months. Kids start to cut their bottom front teeth, and then the top, and the sequence goes, and the back teeth start to come through. So from around the 6-month age, parents have to be very careful caring for their children's teeth. Obviously, talked about the bottle and all of that, but to start brushing them, it is extremely important to start brushing them as soon as they are up. Now, using a toothbrush at that age is not going to be very, very easy from personal experience, but there are a number of ways that can be done. For example, clean, sterile gauze can be wrapped around the finger and used as a kind of rub around the teeth and gums, and children love it, absolutely love it, because they are cutting teeth and their gums are very itchy and irritated. They love that. So if it's done very gently, it cleans the teeth, but at the same time, it might give them relief from some of the teething problems that they might be having at that age.
That's very interesting. And do you put anything on the gauze, or do you just leave it just for the abrasion of it?
At that age, to be honest, I wouldn't use anything. Pure water is absolutely fine. Once they get a little bit older, depending on the age, yes, toothpaste and all of that become important to use.
Yeah. What an interesting subject. Very interesting. So what I was going to say is, what age do kids stop breastfeeding typically? I know some people, I've heard of kids being up to 8, 9, 10 still being breastfed. I don't know how that happens, but you think it would dry up by then.
So I'm not going to make a huge comment on it, but
it's probably a very sensitive area that we should stay away from. But I guess typically kids are moving on to the bottle kind of 2, 3, Jane?
Yeah, I think usually after about a year, people tend to wean.
Yeah.
Children. That's just statistically, I think, what people do. So I think after a year, they can kind of do a mix. So maybe some breast and then onto formula. They have the different growing up milks and things like that. That can actually help too. Because I say once the baby's 6 months, it should be at least starting, maybe even at 4 months, to have solid foods and that, and that's what they need. The breast milk alone won't sustain them enough. But as I say, some people continue to breastfeed longer, but they definitely tend to have more of a mix, I'd say, after a year. because of ease and what they need. So definitely once if they're still falling asleep at 18 months with the bottle in their mouth, I think, as Neysan was saying, need to be careful, not to look at their teeth.
I think the issue of breastfeeding, I think it comes down to personal preference and all of that. And some families prefer to prolong it for as long as possible. And some families like to kind of start weaning at early stages, even as early as 6 months. So I think it's a personal preference.
Yeah.
And it might necessarily be to do with nutrition. I think it can be, the child can sometimes find it very traumatic to suddenly not have the breast anymore. So as I say, it is very personal. So
absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So later on, in terms of, let's stick with the children, but as kids get older, one of the big things is like fizzy drinks and fruit juices and milkshakes and things like that. But what's the effects on the teeth? And from a nutritional point of view, why is that? Is it a problem? Kids having sugary drinks and sweet drinks?
I think the general recommendation, and I would completely agree with this, is the best thing that should go in a sippy cup or a baby bottle is water, and obviously milk. But juice and stuff like that shouldn't go in sippy cups and baby bottles. Again, kids tend to like the sugar taste of fruits and fruit juices, even like natural fruit juices and stuff like that. And what they tend to do is kind of swish it around the mouth as well. And that really bathes the teeth in sugar. And that would be good for the teeth. Again, it goes back to prolonging the exposure of our teeth to the sugary drink. So maybe I genuinely don't believe that fruit juices and natural or otherwise should be used as a snack. They can go with meals. Obviously, kids like them, and it's very easy to give it to them. I'm sure as a parent, I know once that you give a child a fruit or any sugary snack, including juices, they get very hyper half an hour later, and you wonder, why did you give them that snack in the first time? But from a dental perspective, I don't think that's a very, very good choice of a snack for children in general, and especially not in baby bottles or sippy cups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jane, I was talking about this earlier. I had a one-to-one with one of our physios, and we were talking about. I came up with this analogy, and I just wondered if it's actually true that if you feed a child regularly, so it's not hungry, does it still want sweets? It's the reason why kids like sweets, because they haven't got the energy intake, so they're looking for something to boost themselves up. Or why do you feel kids don't like sweets?
Kids want sweets because they enjoy them. Breast milk, as we said, is very sweet, and as mammals, we are programmed to look for that sweet sugar fix in order for survival. But we have moved on in leaps and bounds in terms of what's available to us. So before it would be, berries might be only in season. So once you'd find them, you'd gorge on them to give you as much energy to sustain you. But no, it's purely, they could be bored. They know that there's sweets available. So if they know it's there, the same with adults, we'll want it. In terms of wanting, being low on energy, you'll know if your child is low on energy, they'll become quite lethargic. But in general, no, they have loads of energy, and they really don't need as much as some people give their kids in order to keep that energy up. And I think you just want to give them their breakfast, lunch and dinner, and sometimes snacks, just to keep them nourished and give them their nutrients. And going back to things like fizzy drinks or fruit juices, I mean, essentially when you're giving your child a fluid, it's for hydration, unless they're a young baby and they need milk. So water, to me, really should be it. Maybe milk as well. In the evening, they might want warm milk or something like that. I steered very clear of fruit juices. I know it's, if you want them to drink, you know, fluids because you're worried that they might be dehydrated, then sometimes that temptation is there to go for something that they will actually take. But it's just, as I say, added sugar and added energy that they probably don't even need. So if you are going to give them a fruit juice because it's the only thing they'll drink and you're worried about them becoming dehydrated, dilute it maybe, or use I'm not that into them, but you know, like the cordials that don't have any sugar in them, they've got either polyols or sweeteners in them. And tiny amount, just to make it a little bit more palatable for them and they think they're getting a treat. But in terms of fizzy drinks, in my house, they're grown-up drinks. In the same way I wouldn't give my child a glass of wine, I wouldn't give her a glass of Coke or Diet Coke either.
Jane, I'm very disappointed. So you still have fizzy drinks in your house?
No, that's what I mean.
They're grown-up drinks.
Well, Christmas, if I have guests over, mixers, like, well, she wouldn't want.
I was going to say, what do you put in your gin?
Well, diet tonic, so she probably wouldn't.
Diet tonic. Is that bad?
Diet tonic.
Diet tonic.
No. Well, no. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff around about sweeteners, but I think it's, if you're not having it a lot, they're probably okay. I think the research is not really substantial enough to say that sweeteners are actually bad, and it depends on the sweetener. Yeah, I mean, I could just have sparkling water with it, but it'd be much more enjoyable with a nice diet tonic.
Sparkling water and gin. Does that work?
Sparkling water and gin, and I don't know why I'm going on to alcohol now, and squeeze a lemon.
Just because you mentioned the adult drinks, I was interested to see what a nutritionist drinks if she doesn't drink mixers with her gin. Because you drink gin, right? I imagine. Everyone sees
gin. But if I was trying to steer away, I know when I had problems with, I think we spoke about this earlier on, gut problems or things like that, and you still want an alcoholic drink, a vodka with sparkling water and a squeeze of lemon juice and squeeze of fresh lime juice, which I know.
Oh, very interesting.
but no, as a nutritionist, you won't find Coca-Cola in my house or even Diet Coke. But if we go out to a restaurant, after, my daughter hit a certain age, they go to parties, things like that, they see fizzy drinks, but I just say no, they're for grown-ups.
Yeah. No, very interesting.
I would completely agree with Jane there. Fizzy drinks are not really, and there are a lot of research on their bad effects on the body in general and on the teeth. So I would completely agree that they should be very, very limited, if at all, in children that young. And just on the topic, Stephen, I just thought of something. This is from my own personal experience as a father. I think kids get used to what you give them from a very young age. For example, when we were weaning our own daughter, we didn't start with the sweet foods like an apple or a sweet potato or carrot, because once their palate gets used to the sugary foods and the sweet foods, they won't like the other stuff like the broccoli mashed and peas and stuff like that. So it might be helpful advice for someone watching to start with the kind of more bland foods that are not that sweet, and that expands their palate. And as they grow older, it's not just the sugary foods that they are looking for. They are used to other types of foods. And it's a proud father moment for me to say that one of my daughter's favorite side things on her plate is a broccoli. So that I have to tip my hats off to my wife. She introduced them in a very systematized manner, and now she's quite happy eating her broccoli, along with the other sweeter foods.
Yeah, no, very interesting. If you don't mind, I've got a couple of questions from our viewers on Facebook. So Saha was asking Jane, so Jane, are there certain types of food that you'd suggest when it comes to weaning babies onto solids initially? And are there particular fruits or vegetables that are preferable nutritionally for young babies in terms of balancing sugars?
I think when it comes to weaning kids onto foods, it depends on, there's two sort of different strategies. So some people kind of mush everything up and sort of use the spoon. There's also the sort of solid food eating where they are allowed to kind of explore it more. And you'll have to see which works for you and your child and what you can kind of manage as the least stressful. In terms of what to actually give them, just monitor them as much as you can. And like Neysan was saying, you don't have to go immediately for things you'll know they like banana is very sweet, or even like strawberries, things like that. But be careful with seeded fruits for starters. But even try things like, even when they're teething, cucumber if you want a solid foods. Now, they probably won't actually chew it and swallow it, and you need to be careful. But for them to even get a different taste, for a baby, something even like cucumber, we don't see it as having much flavor, but they will actually think, oh, this is good. But I think it is very much trial and error with babies when they're weaning. So you will, some things they will turn their nose up at and just absolutely point blank refuse, and other things they'll really enjoy. But just try them with little sort of one thing at a time. So as I say, you could start with things like the cucumber, or even things like watermelon, which I know is sweet, but they tend to quite enjoy. Or if they are not really getting on with kind of picking up the food and eating it, you can just sort of mash things up. But I would definitely make an attempt to kind of keep it to sort of one food at a time in the beginning, your fruits, vegetables, and however they kind of prefer to take it, either kind of pureed on a spoon or up then in chunks, then that would definitely be what I would go for. But keep it simple.
Brilliant.
Definitely.
Keep it simple. Good advice. Good advice.
Real specific. If in terms of, I know she said, was there anything in specifically I would recommend for the child in terms of nutrients? No, I think weaning can be a difficult process. So just go with what works, and don't force. Definitely don't force anything on the child if it's resisting it.
Yeah, very interesting. So Saha says, thank you very much, Jane.
Oh, no problem.
So a question for Neysan. So Neysan, there's a question for you that says, it's from Choco Ellie. So she was asking, how many hours should she have between having different meals to help keep her teeth healthy?
That's a very good question, and I get that asked that question quite frequently. And my answer to this is always depends on the needs of the child. But in general, you have to allow at least an hour for the acidity in the mouth to neutralize after eating most meals that contain carbohydrates, sugars, and stuff like that. So within that hour, it is absolutely critical not to be snacking, because every time, even half an hour later, if you snack on something, the saliva in the mouth takes basically another hour from that point to neutralize the acidity. So the insult of the acid on the teeth keeps basically going on. A more difficult with children below the age of 6 to do that. But they, if they're snacking, for example, celery sticks, for example, they do contain less sugars and stuff like that. Stuff like that, the good sugars, for example, carrot sticks, stuff like that might be a bit more helpful to keep them going for a little while, rather than giving them a bar of chocolate or an ice cream a couple of hours later. But I would say a couple of hours at the very minimum between meals or snack times for kids, and that would be an educated guess on my part.
That's brilliant. It fits nicely into my next question, Neysan. So, is there a way of snacking smartly? Because the snack's effectively going to break up that mealtime. And the same question will go to Jane in terms of the calorific intake as well. Because we mention snacks a lot when it comes to calories, but it's not something that people talk about so much when it comes to like their teeth as well. And that was a great question from Choco there. So it's give her a bit of a like for that one. But what are your thoughts on snacking smartly?
Snacking smartly. It's like we were discussing this a couple of weeks ago, being at Easter and stuff like that. Is it better to your child have the full massive Easter egg in one go, or break it up in chunks and give it to them every hour? Certainly every hour doesn't work. We know that it does cause damage, and getting them to eat the full Easter egg one go is a different kind of wrong. As a parent, you'll pay for it.
Eat it.
So I'd say confining, say if you really on a cheat day want to really enjoy 2 bars of chocolate, have them at the same time, after a meal preferably, rather than basically saving one of them for half an hour later. So confine it to mealtime, have them as a dessert, for example. So that's what we did with our daughter. We saved the bigger parts of the Easter egg, and she was having them as her dessert after mealtimes. So that minimized the frequency of sugar intake in her diet. So that would be something to watch out for as well.
That's really interesting. So, Jane, one of the big areas that people talk about is the blood glucose level and trying to like keep it level. But how does that figure in with the advice that you might give to people in terms of like when they eat their Easter eggs?
Their Easter eggs. Well, definitely, if you had an entire Easter eggs, I wouldn't be worried for the entire day about your blood glucose concentrations at all. When it comes to snacking, and people, I think sometimes they can use it as an excuse, like, oh, I feel like my blood sugar's low, I better have a snack. Snack. Well, maybe just get up and walk about. I mean, if you've been sitting at a desk and you think your blood sugar's low, chances are it's probably not. My advice would be get up, kind of change your scenery if you can, even if it's just 5 minutes going to the bathroom and going here. Ask yourself, am I really hungry or am I just bored?
Yeah. Sometimes
we confuse hunger with slight dehydration. So I would say have a glass of water. That sounds like when you want a chocolate bar, a glass of water isn't going to satisfy you. But take your time, have a drink, have a glass of water, or have a glass of water and maybe a tea or a coffee, depending on the time of day. But to have things like snack bars and sugary treats in between meals, I really wouldn't recommend unless you're about to go and perform intense cardiovascular exercise and you really need something so that you don't fall to the floor. But if you think you could do your exercise and then have your lunch afterwards or something like that, is the snack really important? It's all about thinking about when your meal times are coming. If you find you're going to be absolutely starving by the time dinner time or any meal time comes, and you're going to end up snacking or overeating at meal times, then of course have a snack, but keep it healthy. As I say, I would tend to choose fruit, and maybe Neysan might say no, but even things like a small bit of hummus and celery sticks or something like that, or like oat cakes, slow releasing carbs to kind of keep you satisfied. But yeah, the chances of your kind of blood sugar dropping, you'd really know if you were really, really low on glucose, because you would be falling down or fainting. So if you're just sitting at your desk and you think, oh, I think my blood sugar's low, I'm going to go have a Snickers, and then no, definitely not.
Jane, do you think that sometimes adds to the problem though, because people they have something sugary, their blood sugar spikes, and they get the dip again, and then they feel like, oh, I need to do that again because last time it made me feel so good, so I'm going to have it again. So they're looking for that constant
It's the
like
feeling
pick
that
me
they're
up.
looking for. It's not really satisfying hunger. So it's, again, just that, oh, that biscuit was nice. Oh, I don't really want to have one, but that biscuit literally plays on your mind, and then you go and you have more. And I think it can be more, snacking can be more association, like, oh, it's 11's, so it's time for snack.
Chocolate bar.
Yeah, exactly. I try to say to people, just eat when you are hungry and when you can sit and relax. Snacking tends to be kind of a throwaway thing that people do at their desk or just on the go or not thinking, and that's not something I go in for at all. So I try to say to people, no, it's better to wait if you can, and wait till meal times. And as I said, there's huge amount of benefits to intermittent fasting. Now, I'm not saying people should fast for long periods of time where they actually do get to the point where their glucose levels drop and then they are feeling faint and dizzy and not well. But if you haven't got a huge gap between, your meal times, you really don't need a big snack in between. And if you can, then wait.
Absolutely. It's I think we were speaking about this a couple of weeks ago, Stephen, and being mindful of what we eat is really important. A lot of us might be snacking and you're not conscious of what you're eating. You're just eating to eating, and you're not even realizing what you're eating and why you're eating it. So being a little bit more mindful about why we are actually eating that, I don't know, chocolate bar or whatever it is we're having for that snack. It really helps us being more conscious of what we actually consume during the day. And just an interesting, now this is an anecdotal fact based on my own experience. There's no scientific basis to it. At least I'm not aware of any. Chefs and people who basically work in kitchens in restaurants and stuff like that, where cooking is their primary career or occupation, they do tend to have slightly elevated risk of dental decay and dental problems, because they are tasting the food regularly and stuff like that, and just making sure that it is up to standard. So it is something that they need to be conscious about and kind of do things slightly differently to protect their dental health. And on the just to elaborate a little bit more, or really give this advice, a lot of people might think, okay, I'm going to have my snack and then I'm going to brush my teeth really well after it, and that should protect my teeth. That's actually one of the worst things that we can do for our teeth, especially if we've eaten something that contains sugar. It does break down into acid in our mouths by the bacteria that's in our mouth, and it weakens the enamel. So going and brushing straight away after eating is quite damaging. It could start removing some surface layer of the enamel of our teeth. So waiting at least an hour after eating any meal before brushing is really something that people should be conscious about. And if you think that, yes, I want to do something to reduce the damage on our teeth, is rinse with pure water. It does neutralize some of the acidity in the mouth. The other thing that the research has backed up and supported is the likes of cheese, for example. It does protect, it has some protective qualities for the teeth and neutralizes some of the acid. That's why cheese plates are quite common on dessert menus. And I actually in restaurants that do it. It does help reduce the effect. So that is something that we can incorporate into our routines as well.
That's what they
so
have.
Jane, I've always tried. Sorry, go on, after you.
That's why they have cheese and pineapple sticks. Probably you have the acid in the pineapple and then the alkaline in the cheese and the calcium.
Yeah, it probably has some scientific background to it.
It tastes good, so yeah.
Very, very interesting. Jane, so we were talking a little bit earlier on with Nico about the effects of gut bacteria on sugar as well. There's some hormonal effect of eating chocolate, isn't there? So it's not just a sugar high that people can get from that. It's also potentially having an effect on hormone production as well.
Do you mean like kind of the sort of endorphin release and that sort of feeling of pleasure? Yeah. So yeah, as I say, chocolate is,
and serotonin as well. That's what I was thinking of.
And in many respects, it's almost like a drug. It releases the kind of pleasure feeling that we have. So yeah, I mean, chocolate's wonderful, and I don't like to be overly restrictive with people, but it is something that should be viewed as a treat, because I think we reach for it far too often, and as even with children, Easter eggs. I mean, when I think about the amount of chocolate that's come and gone in the past week in this house, it's ridiculous.
Do you have chocolate in your house? I was going to ask you. I thought it might be a bit rude to ask, but you have chocolate in your house.
I think it sounds like I'm like hoarding guns or something. Yes, I got chocolate in my house. I like chocolate.
So do I, by the way.
I could tell you liked it. You defended it. I'm going to ask Neysan in a second if he has sugar in his tea, so you better get ready.
Well, I wouldn't have sugar in my tea, and I'm careful because I'm aware of kind of for health reasons, but I don't think, I say some nutritionists can be very restrictive, and that's fine. And there's reason to be in many respects. If I was told, you know, you can never have a Snickers again, I would probably be very upset, you know, unless
Snickers. It's not even like a little dairy milk, it's like a Snickers bar. That's like proper chocolate.
Well, I haven't had like a full-size Snickers in, I don't know, maybe a few years. I might, you know, the little ones that come in the...
Oh, the little ones, like the miniature ones. Or the...
I might have two, but they're even far between. But yeah, I mean, it's not, chocolate isn't something I reach for when I'm like hungry or in need, or, you know, I do like it. And on the weekend, I'll definitely have it. But I wouldn't have a lot. Like, I think, you know, some people, I know some even in my family would not be able to leave the rest of the kind of a large chocolate bar, whereas just the one kind of line. But I don't think it's fair to say, no, never, ever, ever eat chocolate. There are going to be times when you want to have it, and I think you should view it as a treat and an allowance every so often. Because as soon as you say, no, that's off limits and it's completely restricted and it's never again, then your mind just goes, oh, you know, no, and it's too much. And then we almost the opposite. But yeah, I mean, you're allowed to have that little, you know, kind of hormonal release every so often with a bit of chocolate. I don't think that people should be denied that for all eternity, but it shouldn't be maybe not an everyday occurrence, and certainly not an every meal. Like, I've had breakfast, now it's time for chocolate. I've had lunch, now it's my dessert. You know, once a day.
Yeah. I think that's the thing about all of our professions, because it's like you hear of some practitioners, and it's not a big problem, but it's just interesting that they're very militant with the advice they give and the way they live their lives. I think that's cool, and I completely respect that. I just think that a lot of it is about balance. Like if you have loads of sugar and then you go and brush your teeth, or you have loads of anything and you go and brush your teeth straight away afterwards, it's not like the science is there to say that isn't such a good idea. But I think also one of the negative things that can happen with sugar in particular is that people abstain from it altogether, and they do they're obsessive about cutting it out. And I think that causes potential other issues that are probably more long-term, like having anything in your life that you can't do, I think, and you force yourself not to do, I think is kind of putting a psychological restriction on you. So I don't think that's particularly healthy. And I think sometimes I'd be interested to know, Jane, your point of view on replacing sugar with sweeteners. Like, there's been a whole shift recently, hasn't there, with the sugar tax, and that everyone's just dumping sweeteners in there. And I know from personal experience that Robinson's fruit juice, when I drink it, it does something crazy to my head. Like, I get constant headaches after it, and it's got very little sugar in it, but it's got quite a few sweeteners in it that I've seen, or maybe not so Robinson's, but other brands of fruit juice concentrate.
Yeah, the kind of squash and things like that.
Yeah, squash.
So this is when the sugar tax came in. I remember I went to a conference on sort of, if you take it out now as consumers, we want it to taste exactly the same as it did originally, but have less sugar, and we'll feel like we're being great and really healthy by having the no added sugar one. But in order to have it taste very similar, it's usually not identical. You've got to replace it with sweeteners, and depending on the sweetener will affect the taste. So it tends to be more the kind of chemical ones, like what's it?
Stevia.
Sucralose. I know, like the chemical. So stevia would be.
Oh, sorry, that's a natural one. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's sucralose and aspartame.
Aspartame. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that tend to be can have negative effects. I say people can be intolerant to them. They can even, cause things like diarrhea. And as you say, even headaches and feeling a bit funny. So it might be that you're actually intolerant to whatever is involved in making that sweetener. And as I say, it is artificial. But some of them will say kind of not artificial, but they're also not great. Some foods will have like polyols, so sugar alcohols that are neither sugar or alcohol, but they're used instead, and they are somewhat better than the kind of highly kind of chemical sweeteners, but again can cause overstimulation in the gut, and again can make you feel a bit funny or even nauseous afterwards. So it is all about tolerance. And then when it comes to food, so I found now you have these kind of milky bars and stuff like that that are 30% less sugar, or cereals 30% less sugar. And again, if it was taken out, in order for it to taste similar, something's gone back in. And sometimes it's just dietary fiber or starches, but then you have to wonder, well, what has that done to the food? And in terms of, okay, fair enough, when you're speaking to a dentist, you want to reduce the sugar, and for valid reasons. But as a nutritionist, I sometimes then say, if it's come out, what has gone in? And that's what we need to think about. Rather than going for the sugar-free option, which so many brands now claim to have, yet you look at it and instead of refined white sugar, it's maple syrup. And again, well, it's still sugar. But I think, be really careful about what's gone in to keep it tasting similar or the same. To remove the sugar. I think it's a dangerous game, and maybe you should just go without, rather than finding a substitute for your sweet treat. Take it out if you can.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Neysan, do the sweeteners have any effect on the tooth at all?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Do foods with high amounts of sweeteners instead of sugar have much effect on the teeth?
As far as I know, the jury is still out, but there is some research to show that xylitol in particular doesn't have as much cariogenic properties, meaning it doesn't cause as much dental decay and stuff like that. But I would take that advice with a pinch of salt. As Jane was saying, those artificial sweeteners might have other damaging effects. It might protect your teeth, but it might cause other damage. So I would be very, very careful with those as well. I tend to agree with Jane. You can't cut it out. It's not being militant. It's being smart about what you snack on, and you're using chocolate bars and stuff like that as treats, and that's what they are, not as main sources of energy and sustenance for our bodies. So once we kind of get into that mindset, I think moderation is the key. I think enjoying a little bit of a chocolate bar every now and again, a little bit of a piece of cake or whatever, it's not going to have a huge amount of damage to us. But if we are doing that on very regular basis after every meal, as Jane said, it's not going to really end up well for anybody, dentally or health-wise.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting topic, isn't it? Really good. So it's reached the 59-minute mark, guys. So what would your top... I'm being very impressed if Jane does what she did earlier on. But what would your top 3 tips with regards to sugar be? Top 5 tips.
I'm not going to give 5.
Come on, Jane, let's hear it. SUGAR. Come on.
No.
No.
Okay. Firstly, if you're using it for fuel, so for athletic reasons, you exercise frequently, you're elite or somewhat elite, you will need, as I say, the carbohydrate. And I know people, might disagree in forms of tooth decay, but that kind of constant, even during the race, hit, but to really take care of your teeth when you can. If you're not utilizing it or needing it for a fuel, then you have to really watch how much sugar, particularly refined sugar, you're having. So tip number 1 would be based around fuel. Do you actually need this for what you're doing throughout the day? Secondly, although it is still sugar, I would tend to go for naturals. So stick with your fruits and vegetables for sweetness and sweet treats. Things like, rather than having a chocolate bar, maybe have 3 nice medjool dates with some Brazil nuts. I find that's just as nice. So substitute maybe your kind of sweet snacky treats, and steer clear of the fizzy drinks if you can. And thirdly, if it's come out, so if it's sugar-free or reduced sugar, think about what's gone in, because it can't come out and taste the same without something replacing it. And you have to weigh up the odds of whether that's actually beneficial or more detrimental than the sugar itself.
Yeah. Very interesting. Thank you very much. And Neysan, what would your top 3 tips be for people thinking about sugar or worried about what they're doing with their sugar?
My first tip, it might not be directly related to sugar, but start brushing baby teeth as soon as they come up. And that puts them on a good path, basically, for good dental health in the future. To go back to Jane's tip number 1 for athletes who need food, basically fuel sustenance throughout the race. Again, it goes back. You're not going to be racing 7 days a week, 30 days a month. So doing kind of during the race, having that little snack, yes, it might have some damaging effects on your teeth, but if it's not done regularly, then it should be okay. In those cases, talk to your dentist, visit the dentist regularly, talk to them, and make sure that if that is an issue for you, what are the ways of reducing the damage that can happen on your teeth, for example. So that would be my tip number 2. And tip number 3 is reduce the amount and frequency. So reduce the amount of sugar that you're taking during every meal, and reduce the frequency. Don't snack on them. Maybe have them for set meal times. And again, I would completely agree with Jane. Treats that like chocolate bars, fizzy drinks, and those artificial fruit juices and stuff like that, they are treats and they should be treated as such and enjoyed every now and again in moderation.
Absolutely. So you've heard it from the horses, well, from the dentist and the nutritionist's mouth. It's all about perfect balance when it comes to sugar. So it's a very important thing to remember. So hopefully you've enjoyed the talk this evening, and you'll join us again tomorrow for another Power Hour. When it comes, did I tell you, Neysan? I looked up Hour of Power, and it's like a part of a religious cult of some description. So I had to rename the whole thing. Called Power Hour now. I think he's frozen.
That's okay.
Excellent. But we had to rename it anyway. But it's it was just really interesting. Lots of people have joined in tonight. Faritesh, it's been great having you, and hopefully you did enjoy it. Thanks very much for commenting. And thanks so much, guys, for all the very interesting questions as well. And if you are around tomorrow night, we've got another Hour of Power coming to you. Neysan, it's been great seeing you today again. Power Hour, sorry. Yeah, I've got to be careful with that, haven't I? Jane, it's been great seeing you, and thank you so much for spending 2 hours of powerful hours with me. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Sugar's low.
Um,
No, I'm joking.
So
Jane,
your sugar's low.
thank you very much for all the advice. It
Feeling
was an
over.
absolute pleasure. And
It was a great
That's been great.
then, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's been good.
fantastic.
thank you so
Brilliant.
much, guys.
But for now, it's bye-bye from me to everyone on Facebook, and bye-bye from the team there. Great. Take care, guys. Bye. Oh, actually, before we go, Jane, how do people get hold of you if they'd like some nutrition advice?
I'll put my email address up, but
Great.
jane@perfectbalanceclinic.com. I'm on there, or leave a comment even on the Facebook page here and tag me in it. I think my tag is on there somewhere. So
Yeah,
yeah,
brilliant.
I'll get in touch with you.
Great. So if you've got any questions and you'd like some advice, then just put them in the description box below, and Jane will put her description. He'll put her email address so you can contact her directly if it's something more personal as well. But Neysan, how do people get hold of you?
Again, I think commenting below, and yeah, I'll make sure to basically link up in the comments below. And if they search Ruskan Family Dental Practice on Facebook, they'll find our page and they can get in touch with us publicly or send us a private message and we'll respond personally to them.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. It's been great talking to you. Take care, guys. Bye.
Good night. Take care.